Business Express with Rotus Oddiri. Good morning, Rotus.
Hey, good morning, Omas. Good to be with you. Good morning to all our listeners, viewers out there. We start another week in August.
Fresh slate. So before we get on, because you mentioned the listener already, so let's let them know they can be part of this conversation as we get on 0809-444-0981. WhatsApp messages only. Once again, 0809-444-0981. Rotus, the table is full for us. Business is set. Let's begin with Niger. Niger closes airspace and then implications of that.
Yeah, so it essentially means that tensions are escalating, and if we don't want violence, we don't want war, because that's just going to have economic implications for countries that are involved. And I mean, you think about the meetings that took place, was it over the weekend or on Friday? They didn't seem to yield much. So you're talking about, with Chad on to the west. I have that right? Yes, to the east. Sorry, Chad to the east of Niger, Nigeria to its south.
Yes.
Senegal to its west, and so on and so forth. There's implications for everybody regionally, especially us. So it's not a good sign. The closing of the airspace is not a good sign.
Well, so as we speak right now, the timeline given by ECOWAS leadership to say reverse and reinstate and Bazoum is lapsed. It was midnight. So the implication, so here we are. Nobody wants war, but who would shift ground? Imagine.
So that's it.
So I'm just bringing this into context to say the proverbial two goats who met in the middle of an old wooden bridge. Nobody wants to go back, and then eventually they fought. The bridge collapsed.
Excellent analogy. And there are people under that bridge, which is, people in the border towns around the cities, or rather the countries that border it. The area has already been hit by insecurity. What this essentially means is that there will be, if they go ahead with war or force, that there will be serious implications. Now, the thing is this: ECOWAS already issued this ultimatum. So, to parse their words, they said that they will take further measures which could include force. So I think they were careful to, so that what that means is that force is not an option yet at this point. So maybe there will be more escalations in sanctions. I'm not really sure how much further they can go with the sanctions, but we have to see. But the thing is, ECOWAS can't look weak because this is Niger calling their bluff, essentially. So now we have to see. And of course, Nigeria makes up the bulk of ECOWAS, and I think is carrying the load here. So we have to see what happens. Maybe try and get some more, diplomacy to play out. But it's a worrisome development.
The man in the eye of the storm, that's President Bazoum, has also called out to the US to say they should not abandon him right now. It is time to restore democracy. Yeah. So we have an insider now calling for the outside world to come in and intervene.
Exactly. And I heard there was a rally in a stadium somewhere in Niamey where people who are supporting the junta said they should stay strong and ignore calls from the outside. There's a lot of pushback here. My thing is just what it means this is a very poor country in Niger. A country that is landlocked, disproportionately dependent on agriculture. Although it's got some minerals and stuff that is also part of its economic output. But we just, at this point, today is a very crucial day. I mean, today, we have to see what announcements are made because the time has elapsed. So now the ball is now in the court of ECOWAS as to what is the next move. And again, everybody's appealing for peace because there will be. The last thing anybody wants now is a war that is going to stretch finances and lead to more casualties. So, we don't need this right now, but at the same time, the junta needs to be told, it needs to be shown that it's in a serious breach here, and the region isn't going to stand for it. So it's a real standoff that we're seeing.
In this case, businesses will suffer. That's the implication on it, Business Express. So
Indeed.
let's get down to Nigeria. President Bola Tinubu, in relation to the first story now, is met with probably meeting with the governors of the border states in Nigeria that borders Niger at this moment. What do you think their discussions would be like at this time?
Yeah, I heard they met last night, Sunday evening in Abuja, and so it was the governor of Sokoto, that's Ahmed Aliyu, Governor Namadi of Jigawa, Governor Buni of Yobe, Governor Nasir of Kebbi, and Governor Diko Rada of Katsina. Not much was leaked as to what they discussed, but obviously, if depending on they express their concerns, I think is what's is understood to be part of that meeting. And again, they will be impacted if any military action that is to take place there. Those border states are going to get the blowback from that, which will impact economic output, jobs, so on and so forth. So we have to hear from the presidency to see what is next. But again, I just hope that they leave force for a latter option and don't escalate this further. We just have to see what they decide.
You can also be part of this conversation. You could chime in at this point on 0809-444-0981, WhatsApp messages only. I see Chibuzo is already responding to a message, one of the earlier topics already, but let's get on to oil prices, because we know whatever touches oil touches us in our spine as citizens, and we know the ripple effect of just one statement saying no more subsidy. And here we are, it's saying oil prices climb. What's the implication with the price of oil and petrol at the pump?
Yeah, so the thing is, we have to brace ourselves for possible higher fuel prices, because in fact, we're getting what is it now? Saudi Aramco is going to be releasing earnings later on today. I mean, that's the lagging results, but pretty much the oil cuts that we've seen, the production cuts from Saudi Arabia. There was also an attack on a Russian naval vessel in, I think I can't pronounce it, Novorossiysk port or something, from a Ukrainian drone, and that Black Sea channel. And so grains and a percentage of oil goes through that channel. So I think that also impacted prices as well. So oil, Brent crude, as my last check, is at $86 now a barrel. Goldman Sachs was saying it to touch $86 by year end or settle around there. So now we're seeing outlook for oil being repriced upwards. So essentially, pretty much this is worrisome for us here because we are looking at more pressure on disposable income if fuel prices continue to climb. We've had to rely basically on just looking at oil prices. I think Nairametrics wrote an article, even the Financial Times wrote that Washington, the United States, they're worried about higher oil prices because their strategic petroleum reserves have come down. They have reserves where they release into the markets to try to support, supplies and also support prices. Because I think oil in the United States, I wrote it down somewhere. I think fuel prices in the United States are at their highest level since October of 2022. So, they are worried. Biden has an election coming up next year. When fuel prices rise, that, flows through, impacts inflation. Inflation has been coming down in the United States. So they're worried. So if the US is worried about higher oil prices and what it means for people buying fuel at the pump, then you can imagine everybody else is going to be worried as well. So Russia is really, they're influential, and they're really, they're impacting grain, with what's been happening with the Black Sea and grain supplies, what that means for wheat and flour. They're impacting oil because they're also cutting production as well. So between them and Saudi Arabia, they're putting pressure on supplies and oil prices.
Yeah, well, this is a classic case of when push comes to shove, you want to show how much weight you can pull. And so Russia is showing that it's no pushover right now with what it's doing. Let's get on to this one. It's more like a credit rating kind of story here. I see here, S&P Global upgrades Nigeria rating from negative to stable. What's the implication for this? Break it down for the man on the street.
Yeah, so that was on Friday. Remember, the big news all of last week was that another ratings agency, Fitch, had downgraded the United States, saying that issues with debt, issues with political gridlock, basically caused them to downgrade the US. So this was on Friday that S&P Global Ratings released theirs. So Nigeria, they were still ranked at B-, which is just 6 levels into junk status. And that is putting us on par with Bolivia and Barbados, some really struggling countries out there. But the credit ratings are basically just an outlook on the public finances of the country, how the economy is going to, and there's basically how decisions that are made impact how global investors will look at the country. So it's a rating, you're ranked, you're basically assessed. So I think it was following the fuel subsidy removal, they said that will augment or at least to some degree, save the country from having to bleed more money spending on fuel subsidies, and then collapsing all the windows for foreign exchange, putting more transparency to have just one window, the I&E window. So those two moves there were part of why they upgraded to a stable outlook from negative. However, they did say that this Niger issue is a headwind, a potential headwind, because if war breaks out and Nigeria is carrying the load, that is going to have economic implications for the country in terms of finances and so on and so forth. So I think it's just they're looking for more reforms that will encourage foreign investors to come into the country, because we need dollars badly. And so if a fund manager of a global investment firm is sitting in Germany or sitting in Thailand and is looking at Nigeria, these kinds of ratings are the types of things that will influence their decision.
The messages are here for you. So let's see what the messages are like. Ian Nacho Chibuzo, I'm not in support of Nigeria going to war in Niger, even in the name of ECOWAS. We have numerous made problems to solve here. Let our leaders focus on it than military coup in Niger. And Tayo comes in with the message, Niger, like other similar nations, are fighting for their independence from neocolonialism, but such fight for freedom bear cost. We can only hope for the best, because war is not good for anyone, both aggressor and the defender. Frank comes on with a message. Good morning, guys. I think President Tinubu should do anything to secure the interest of Nigeria, whether he's using the military force or not. The Nigerian lives and property is all that matters to us. Frank from Satellite Town sent in that message. Yinka Bolu sends in this one, but Nigeria didn't expressly say it was going to war. So why are we twisting the news? Okay, that's what Yinka Bolu has gone to say. And Rotus, if you were listening, Rotus, I said it's the last option. It's not like they're declaring full-scale war, but then those who want peace, they say you must also prepare for war. That's what's been said. But Rotus, we're far out of time, but I know if you can touch briefly on the GSK outing of Nigeria so soon.
Yeah, I mean, they sold their drinks. They're based in the UK. They've got a unit that's been in Nigeria for 4 or 5 decades now. They were in drinks, they were in healthcare, pharmaceuticals. They sold their drinks units, I think it was back in 2013. So was it Suntory, a Japanese company? They said they will focus more on healthcare. Then they've now said that they are essentially leaving. So they're facing more competition in Nigeria from other brands, and also foreign exchange challenges really hit them hard. So unfortunately, that's GSK saying they're moving to a third-party distribution of their pharmaceutical, goods, which is basically an exit. They're leaving.
Okay, this is where we call it. It's a fine place to live business for this morning. Rotus, thank you so much for your time.
Well, Mas, thank you. Thanks for all the messages. Catch you guys tomorrow.
All right. Thank you to Yinka Bolu, Frank, Chibuzo, Tayo. I see all your